Hey everybody, it's Dina Rico from the Creativity Cave, and I'm so excited to tell you about this project. So I am highlighting the spotlight technique on this card along with some watercoloring. And to say that I'm passionate about watercolor would be probably a complete understatement. I love watercoloring. It is my all-time favorite technique. I have been a demonstrator for 23 years in about a week and a half from the shooting of this video, and I can tell you that it is by far my favorite technique to do. It is so easy, and I think it's kind of mysterious, but it's really easy. And so I have lots of great tips and tricks to show you how to do this, as well as kind of explain what the spotlight technique is. So I'm going to show you how I made this card. Now I will tell you my version, I altered the dimensions ever so slightly. It's going to come, the white and pink panels are a little slimmer than what you have on here, or what you see here, just because I wanted to see my card base a little better. And when I started with this piece, it was cut a little crooked. And so well, it's a long story, but needless to say, we're making it better. Okay. So I'm going to start with a piece of Fluid 100 watercolor paper. That's Stampin' Up's name for watercolor paper, or the brand we carry. But it is the best for watercoloring, and the most important tool you can have in watercoloring is to have watercolor paper. And so if you're using regular cardstock, don't bother. You won't get the look that I'm going to show you today. Okay, so what I want to do is take this and stamp on it with this image. And I'm going to use the Blessings of Home stamp set. I really like this. This is actually a bundle, and there's wonderful coordinating die cut images that go with it. Of course, they will cut out these two pieces, but then there's also some branchy things that I've incorporated into our card here. It's a really wonderful stamp set, and it's especially wonderful when you look at the sentiments that come with it. But this is a really big image. And so one thing is watercoloring can be intimidating when you have a large surface to work with. So we're going to take and shrink it down by using the spotlight technique. And then it's also kind of tricky to stamp such a large image as well. So let me show you some tips on that. So I'm going to start by using my Stamparatus. This is our stamp positioning tool. And so I'm going to set this up, and a little tidbit, when you stamp with this, put something under the platform, because then it's a little easier to work with, so it's not sitting on an angle. All right, so I'm going to set this up in my Stamparatus, just throwing in a couple of magnets to hold my Fluid 100, my watercolor paper, in place. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to ink this up with StazOn. Now, when you're watercoloring, you need to use permanent ink or emboss it with embossing powder. So permanent ink will do for this one. And because this is a very large detailed image, I want to use my Stamparatus not only to handle the large image, but also to make sure that when I do stamp it, it stamps out nicely. Now, I'm going to apply pressure on this large image with this hockey puck handle thing. This is an air hockey puck handle, whatever. It just glides across my Stamparatus nicely. Okay, and then I'm going to lift this up, and I did a pretty good job of stamping it, so yay me. Okay, so that looks pretty good, and then I'm going to take this out, and we're going to work with this piece. Now, if I had some missing parts on here, I could have re-stamped it to make sure that I got the full image stamped nicely. That is the beauty of a Stamparatus. Okay, now I'm going to pull this out and set it aside. Now I'm going to do my coloring after I die cut part of this out. So I mentioned that I'm doing the spotlight technique. So I'm going to use the stitched rectangle dies, and of course, here we go. So I picked this piece because I thought it would cut nicely out of my cardstock here. And so I'm just going to position this on here and then use a little Post-it note to hold it in place so that I can die cut it. So I'm not going to color anything except this portion that I'm die cutting. I'm going to run this through my machine. I'll be right back. So we'll just pop this out of our die, and here we go. Now this is the piece I'm going to color, and the rest will leave behind with no coloring on it. Okay. Now to watercolor, you just need a couple of things, and they're pretty basic. You need a watercolor brush of some kind, and I love our water painters. You can put water in the barrel and squeeze it out to work with it as you go. I also have a rag here. This is actually a burp rag that's pretty, but I use mine to clean my brush off, which is really handy. And then for colors, I'm going to use our Stampin' Up! Ink pads. These are water-based ink pads that are so awesome. Now, all of the supplies I'm using except for this rag can be found in my online store. There's links in the description of this video if you would like to participate and make your own fabulous card. All right, so the colors I'm using today are Pale Papaya, Polished Pink, Pacific Point, and Granny Apple Green. That is quite the alliteration right there, isn't it? Now, to use ink pads, I'm not going to use the pad itself, but rather I'm going to squeeze ink into the lid of the pad like this. So I'm squeezing the ink to the lid, and you can see it shows up there. You can also put re-inker and drip it into the ink pad lid, which is where this big drip came from. Or you can drip it onto some other non-porous surface like one of your blocks for stamping, or a sheet of plastic or a plastic palette, whatever. Okay, now I'm going to start with the largest portion of my piece here, and I want to color this in with my Pacific Point. And so I'm just going to squeeze the water. You can see it's coming out here. And I want to pick up some of the color. I want the darkest color to be towards the center of my image, and then I want it to kind of get lighter as we go out. So I'm doing the center all the way around my image. And the image has given me a lot of tips and tricks on how to color with the shading that they've included in the image. So where there's darker lines, that's where I want darker color. And then when there's no dark lines, I want it to be lighter. Okay, so dark towards the center, and then we'll get lighter as we go out. Now what I'm going to do is I've got all this ink on my brush. I'm going to use this rag to clean it off. You can see, and I got a little crazy with the ink there. So it really helps to have this to clean your brush off. Now I want to squeeze this so I've got some clean water, and then what I'm going to do is blend this all out. Okay, and then what happens is I get a nice fading of the colors, blended, beautiful colors. And you can see I'm even leaving some white spots in here, and that's okay. That's kind of the beauty of watercoloring like that. And because this is not a super precise image, it's kind of sketchy lines a little bit, kind of dotty lines, I can kind of mimic that in my coloring and make my coloring not super perfect. And that's the beauty of watercolor, is you can kind of do it however you want. The reason I love watercoloring with stamping is because I can't draw. And so having the watercolors, or being able to watercolor a pre-drawn image, which is what a stamp really is, makes me look super artistic in the areas where I lack artistic talent. Now, I'm pretty good at the watercoloring, not going to lie. I feel like I know what I'm doing, but I can't draw anything to save my life. So that's why I love stamping so much. Okay, now here is what that looks like. Isn't that pretty? And aren't those little white spots that I left open kind of cool? Oh, I love them. Okay, and who knew, right? All right, let's move on to our next color. I want to do a flower with the Pale Papaya. And I love the combination of Pale Papaya and Pacific Point. They're really nice, kind of almost like opposites, which is pretty cool. Okay, so I'm going to go around this flower. And by the way, sometimes it helps to kind of reference the original. So come back to your stamp set and be like, okay, yeah, that flower is like that. Because we did kind of we cut off a big chunk of this, so it helps to look back at the photo to have reference. Now, one tip, I'm going with this orange color next to this blue color, and I do not want those two colors to mix. So whenever I get up in there, I want to make sure that the blue is dry before I add in the pale papaya, the orange. And so be very careful to ensure you're not mixing wet things near wet things, because they will bleed in together and then they will look ugly. And we want only pretty things, right? Okay, so I'm going to do this flower over here in my orange, and just like the blue, I'm going to get rid of some of that ink. I'm going to squeeze out my water. I'm going to pick up just a little because this color is really light. I'm going to pick up just a little, and then we're going to add in. And so you can see my color is much lighter. Doing the same thing, you can leave that white area where you're coloring again. You won't see it quite as much just because this color is already kind of naturally a lot lighter, but we can still kind of do that on here. And there we go. Okay, sometimes I will pick up some of the dark color and just help blend things back in. Now, the beauty of watercolor is that if you need to, you can remove color. It's kind of like it makes it erasable almost, which is really handy. Sometimes you might put colors in a place you don't want it. Maybe you colored a leaf, a petal color, or something like that. You can remove watercolor, which is really nice. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We'll do kind of the rest over here. There's not a lot over here, so we'll just kind of go through it and we're good. All right, we'll switch colors by cleaning on our rag. This is handy. Now I want to do the last couple flowers in my polished pink ink. Same technique. Once again, we'll put dark down by the base of the petal, and then we'll bleed everything out to light here in just a moment. Keeping in mind that we do have some leaves in here that we need to account for, and that sometimes I need to come back to my image to reference it, just so I color things correctly. And that's okay. Go on back and take a look whenever you need to. All right, so there we go. That looks pretty good. All right, next up, I want to add, actually, I see where I need a little bit more pink right over here. And I want to add a little bit more of the dark pink to the center of these, because if they all look the same shade, you want to add some darker areas. Or conversely, take a clean brush and clear out to make lighter areas. Okay, now I'm going to add some green for my leaves. I've got a leaf over here. And I've got a leaf right in here. So we're going to make that a leaf, and this is actually a leaf as well. Okay, so that looks good. Now these leaf sections are pretty small, so we're not going to have a ton of ability to shade them, but that's okay. That looks good. And then I want to do light green for the inside, a real light green. Because if you look at like a daisy, there's nice light green centers, almost yellowy green. So that's what we want for these. I'll pick up a little more color because it's running out on my brush. And just like before, we'll put, where there's darker lines, we'll put more dark color in the center here, for instance. And where it's lighter, we will leave it light. All right, get the center of this flower and whatever that is right there, and then we're good to go. All right, now the last thing I want to do, and this can really make an image truly pop, especially on this where we're doing the spotlight technique, is I want to come back in and add a really light shade to go around the edges here. Okay, so I'm going to come back to my my Pacific Point ink, And I want to really just pick up a little bit of color and then really water it down by squeezing out some water from my brush. And then what I've got is a really light shade. Another thing you can do is bring in a scrap just so you can test it and make sure that it's going to be nice and light. Because you never want to put something down that you can easily add, but it's a little harder to take away. So you could always add color, but taking it away is trickier. You can take it away because you're using watercolor paper, but if you aren't, it gets tricky. Okay, so I'm putting just that light layer down, and you might not see it here, but when we add it back to our card, it will really make a difference. Okay, so I've got that color down. That looks pretty good to me. I'm happy with it. So I'm going to close up my ink pads, and then we're going to come back to our original stamped piece. Now on here, this is going to go right back in, and now do you see the difference with that blue right there? Oh, it's amazing. Okay, now a couple things. First and foremost, I want to take and pop this up in my finished version of this card. But I also want to embellish it a little bit. And I need to add my sentiments. I'm going to take and do my sentiment next. I've got one of the sentiments from my stamp set, and it says, "You are a real blessing to everyone around you." Oh, so nice. So we're going to ink that up in some black StazOn ink and stamp it right there. And I stamped it a little crooked, but we're not going to judge. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to take and pop this right back in here, but we're going to put some dimensionals behind so that it sticks up, because it's fancy and important and we want to show that. Okay, so I'm going to put one kind of down here, and then I'm leaving this area open. Okay. Let's pull these off, but we got to stick our panel down to our layer of cardstock first. So I've got a polished pink panel. Gosh, all these P words, goodness. And we're just going to adhere this right there, like so. And then I also wanted to add some embellishments to this. So one of the things that I want to use is a little bit of ribbon. So I've got my white glittered organdy ribbon, and this just adds a little shimmer. And I'm going to put just a little zigzag behind here. I just want to add a nice little touch of this. It's not too colorful, so the focus remains on our beautiful watercoloring, but it also just adds a nice little touch. I'm going to trim that off, and then we'll put a little adhesive just to hold that ribbon in place. And then I'm going to pop this up onto my card like so. And it just fits right back in here like a puzzle. So pretty. Isn't that just gorgeous? Okay, now a couple more touches. I also took and die cut some of those branches I mentioned earlier. I die cut these with a little bit of my gold paper. This is from the Rose Gold specialty paper. All this, of course, as I mentioned before, all these supplies are listed in on my blog post for this. I've got kind of the main things I used in the description of this video, and then every single color, every single thing I used is in my blog post. But the highlights are in the description of this video. Of course, my blog post will also have additional photos of this project, close-ups, and all the things. Okay, so I die cut those pieces, and we're just going to tuck them in to our card and adhere them, kind of stick them into place with some glue dots. So I'm just going to have this piece curving right there. And actually, it was not supposed to go there. It was supposed to go on the other side. So everything is curved in the right direction. We'll just tuck that back in. It's stuck behind. And then we'll redo this. Okay. So we'll tuck that in right there. And we'll sneak this one in down here. Now everything's going to be sticking out in the right direction. Okay, there we go. Very nice. And then I will just add this to the piece up top. It's so pretty. Now, if you would like to learn how to watercolor, like me, how to take all the mystery and scariness out of watercoloring, I have an amazing watercolor stamp camp coming up. It is perfect for anybody who is a stamper. And I will, I'll put some details in here. To register, you just need to drop me an email and I'll give you the link with all the information. It's going to be amazing. I'm just looking for my bone folder though. Here we go. So I can fold my card. It's happening. Everything is work at your own pace, but I'm presenting all of the information. I'm on the second weekend of February. I think it's the 11th and 12th, or 12th and 13th, something like that. And I'll put the actual dates in the description of my video for you, but it's something I've been working on for a long time, and I think it's going to be amazing. And if you are watching this video way late, you can still participate in that event. Like I said, everything's recorded, and you will learn so much. Oh my gosh. I put a lot of content into it. So there we go, friends. Isn't that gorgeous? We can also do one more thing, because I'm sure some of you are just sitting at home saying, put some Stella on it. I heard you. Here we go. So I'm being a little careful because I don't want to mix like blues and oranges. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to bring in my scrap, make sure there's no blue ink on my Stella, and then we will do the same thing. Stella can bleed colors together, so you just want to be careful. Get a feel for how it's coming out. And you will have fun. Okay, so join me for that watercolor workshop. Oh, you will not be disappointed. It's broken up into several different lessons, and each lesson has like practice exercises and or projects to go with it. It's going to be amazing. All right, friends, thank you so much for stamping with me today. If you could give me the thumbs up, that would rock. If you love what you see and want to see more from me, subscribe right here and enjoy. Thank you for stamping with me today, guys. Bye.